Hey garden friends, welcome on back to Flower Patch. Today we're going on a beautiful rose garden tour. This is the private garden of the president of the local Rose Society here, and yeah, she just has a spectacular display of roses. She does like I do. She leans into plants that thrive in her climate, area, etc., and plants multiples of those. But this is like 2.5 acres of roses primarily, and yeah, so come on along and enjoy seeing all of the roses. So we get started here at the entrance to this beautiful rose garden in the foothills of California. This is a private rose garden that I was able to tour. Unfortunately, my microphone wasn't working, but you can see the fence there. That's an 8-foot deer fence because, of course, being in the foothills, there's lots of deer around here that would decimate this garden in a heartbeat. But along here, the white roses are, some are Pope John Paul and some are icebergs. The yellow roses, which were so sweetly scented, that is Julia Child, and they were just in full glorious bloom. I've never been a real lover of yellow blooms or on roses, but I loved that one, and I may have to get me one. Now, she gave us, the owner of this property gave us a tour on a golf cart. This is like 2.5 acres of roses. And she gives us an overview, and then later we walk through. But here is the entrance. You see some people coming in to tour. This was open to our Rose Society members and others. Here again is the other side of the Julia Child roses, and over here on this side is her vintage rose garden. These are all heirloom types, like from 1800s, early 1900s, and planted amongst all the native oaks, etc. This was truly a beautiful area. Again, the 8-foot fence, you see it in the background. I like the way it kind of fades into the background. Here she was sharing her green rose. This is a very interesting rose. They have it at the Huntington Library Gardens as well. It was the first place I saw it. I love the views. You can see the views of neighboring hilltops. Now along here, you can see briefly the planting of the white roses, that is the iceberg roses, with the Mystic Spire salvia. And that's where I got my idea to copy in my garden, and I hope mine turns out as beautiful. You know what? It just doesn't come through in the video as beautiful as it was in person. I just loved it. And the Mystic Spires does well for me, as do usually the iceberg roses. Can you see? Look at that view. It was just amazing. So along here, more roses. These, a lot of them are hybrid teas. She does like I do. She kind of leans into plants that thrive for her. She'll put in certain plants or try them, and if they thrive, they get repeated throughout her garden. And it's the same for the roses. For me, some roses won't thrive. Hybrid teas don't usually thrive in my climate, so I don't have them as she does. She's in a warmer area. And look at that beautiful white rose climbing that huge arbor. It was just amazing. Yeah, lots of iceberg. And I said, though, that pink rose in the background, I had gotten some cuttings of it. It's a vintage rose, and it just blooms and blooms and blooms. And the roses are very small, about the size of I'd say a little ping pong ball, but just fragrant and beautiful. I love roses that will bloom throughout the summer, and that was one of them. I'm hoping my cutting takes, but if not, I know where to get more. She has repeated that rose in her garden, and there's a lot of repeats in here. When I walk through, I was talking to you and giving you the names of the roses, and I didn't video the tags, and I'm really sorry about that, because after I got home and reviewed the video and found out I didn't have any sound. I was just frustrated because I wanted the names of the roses for you. But she was explaining how she's a no spray gardener. They will get powdery mildew, etc., and they just power through it. She doesn't worry about it. And more beautiful tree roses along this path. The green is not grass, it's just weeds that get weed-eated down regularly. Probably they will dry out as the summer proceeds because that area is not watered, only the areas around the roses. And up here, those red roses, I'll come back to those in a minute and talk about them. Now, along the left on this portion is her David Austin rose collection. Now, the David Austins don't do as well in super hot areas as they do in cooler areas. At least that has been her observation, though they are beautiful. This is Sally Holmes' climbing rose in her barrel there. And she was sharing her chicken area. This hemmed-in area she tests different roses and starts roses bare root. And those are her fancy chickens, her Polish crested, and she has some beautiful yellow roses. I didn't get the name of them in these barrels. Obviously this wasn't an area you could plant in the ground easily, so she made do with these wine barrels, half wine barrels. And then these are her standard size chickens in that area. So we went around her circle here. In the background, and I'll come back to it, you see to the left or the right was some unusual trellises she made for her roses, which, as I said, we will come back to. Now again, the David Austin roses. We're almost done in the cart, and we'll go and start walking in the garden soon. I'll climb out here and thank her before she takes off with another troop. Now here is the red rose garden, and she had Olympiad and Abraham Lincoln rose in here, Mr. Lincoln, and the Olympiad, they were huge. And there was a third one in here, and I don't remember the name of it. But you notice how deep red that Olympiad was. And then you go to the Mr. Lincoln, and it is more burgundy, which when I had a Mr. Lincoln, to me, it was just a deep red and not more burgundy. So you can see how when you put two together, you can really see the different shades of color that they come in. But these were big, beautiful blooms, just so healthy. I may have mentioned it before, but Mr. Lincoln was the very first rose I'd ever bought myself when I was newly married. This iceberg was just in full glory here over this arbor. This is the patio area, which has beautiful, beautiful views around. I was trying to get a feel for the view. If you sat out here and enjoyed coffee in the morning or afternoon tea, and look at, they have a beautiful pool, and it has where it runs off the edge and it drops into that lower area, and it has a beautiful sound of flowing water. But look at that, you could just see as far as the eye could see. Now soon that out there where it's the lime green color, that will be more golden. Now we're coming back around on this patio section to the side area where you step down to more seating and barbecue. And she had some Amistad salvia there. And I don't remember, this was another salvia. This isn't Mystic Spires, it was another one. And I couldn't remember what that one was. Might be Big Blue. But I always love the Amistad salvia. It is not perennial for me, but it is for her. And this one is Pope John Paul, this beautiful white rose. She had lots of these because they do very, very well for her. And she repeats, and here is some Nepeta, which Nepeta is a fantastic perennial that the gophers here leave alone. She also has a lot of stuff planted in gopher cages because she has them too. Now this salvia was just huge and a little bit different. It was a light lavender color, and I had said the name of it, but I didn't get a view of the tag. But obviously very big and beautiful. All of these salvias had such a beautiful scent, a sagey scent. This is where I'm really mad at myself, because I was naming all of these beautiful roses for you in case you liked them and wanted to try them for yourself. But yeah, without the sound, I'm lost. I don't remember, because a lot of them were very different roses from what I grow. Oh, I went down to look at the name tag, and you notice she's got some yellowing on the leaves, etc. This is just a hardy rose garden that performs, and whatever doesn't make it or doesn't thrive, she removes and replaces with something that does. And she doesn't sweat it if a few things look a little ratty. But that happens. If you've got a huge garden like this and you are the one taking care of it, only you don't have a crew or people on payroll, then you make allowances. But look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Some of these had a lot of scent, some had very little scent. But look at that glossy foliage. That's what you want in a rose. So obviously, since this is a no spray garden, these are very hardy roses that will do well in her climate. Now, if you have a different climate, different roses will perform differently for you, as some of these roses wouldn't do well for me in my climate. So as she does, I trial and test and find which ones do well and go with those. So I'm always testing your roses, and if they don't do well, I dig them up and give them to someone who has different conditions than I do. But look, these are just so beautiful planted together. And I'm sorry I didn't get the tags. I should have. Normally I do. I go and I film the tags too. But that is that vintage rose that she says does gorgeous no matter what. And yeah, I've got to get more cuttings of that one. It just is. I love vintage roses anyways, you know that, antique roses. They have such a history, and she has planted many of them because of their superb performance in her garden. And a lot of vintage roses have the sweet, sweet scent. Now, see, this one's called Over the Moon. I loved that one. It's a hybrid tea, though. As I've said before, hybrid teas just don't thrive in my cold conditions. And another shot of that arbor. Covered with an iceberg rose. A lot of people, they kind of poo-poo iceberg roses because you see them in parking lot strips everywhere around, and that's because they're a tough performer. So beautiful lavender planted there with this rose. That vibrant yellow, I would wish I got the name of it. It's different than the Julia Child. It was different. Now here's that lower patio area that we came at from down those stairs prior. And it looks like she bought the same petunia things at Lowe's that I had, where the super petunias were planted all together. And she has more of the burgundy colored super petunia than I got in mine. Look at that coreopsis doing so beautiful. Mine haven't started blooming yet. I did this rose garden tour about 3 weeks ago, and it shows you how far ahead she is from me. Yeah, my roses are just now starting to open up. Another beautiful salvia amongst her iceberg roses. This surrounds this whole patio area. I love that the roses are just short enough you can see beyond them, around to the landscape beyond. I loved the edging on these. Isn't that just beautiful? Amazing what just a little bit lower elevation. How much longer she gets a bloom than I do. The fence was wonderful in that it really didn't stop the eye from going beyond, but it does stop the deer, and very necessary. She also had this finer mesh at the bottom to prevent rabbits and bunnies from coming in and other critters. So here's another one. Going back up, seeing the tree roses along here, the beautiful ground covers, little statuary. She had little bunnies there, the only kind of bunnies you want in your garden. All sizes, types. This is a open rose or a single petal rose. The next one up above looks like it's the tree rose, looks like it's Double Delight. I don't know what the single petal rose was. Yeah, Double Delight is heavily scented and gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous. She had hanging baskets of petunias along, which just added to the beauty, of course. And in the background, she has some oleanders. Deer won't eat oleanders, thankfully. This is a beautiful single red rose. Single roses are great for pollinators because of the open where they can get into the pollen very easily. For a no-spray garden, I just couldn't get over how gorgeous these roses are. I am also a no-spray gardener, but some of my things struggle. I have just did a video of my garden and the roses and how the weevils, needle nose rose weevils. Look at that lavender was just growing out of the hillside. You could tell it was a volunteer. But the needle nose weevils have really done a number on a lot of my blooms. And so I've been picking them off and dropping them in soapy water. That apricot color, isn't that just gorgeous? So many beautiful roses. I love roses, but I also love a lot more other plants that she doesn't have. Like I didn't notice any irises or other like hardy geraniums or other things. But that's okay. To each their own. I should give her a few hardy geraniums and see how she likes them. They'll do fabulous. I didn't catch the name of that one, sorry. I hope you're enjoying this little rose tour, even though you have to just listen to me with the voiceover and not get the names. It was a beautiful day. The weather was barely in the 70s, so it didn't get hot. It was very pleasant to look at all the roses. Could take our time viewing all of them. Oh, there's a beautiful salvia. They have drip everywhere, which is smart in this type of climate. Lots of barrels. And this is the one I was telling you. I wanted to get you a close-up. This is what I want to do. I have planted the white roses, and I have planted some of the Mystic Spire salvia with it. And we'll see how it does in my garden. But I just loved that vignette of the white and blue. I might interplant with a little Nepeta as well. But I love the Italian cypress. I do believe that's what those are. Makes you feel like you're in Tuscany. And they repeated, here's the white and blue again. The white roses with the Mystic Spire Salvia. Now we're going into the vintage rose garden. And the heavily scented Julia Child there with the yellow. And this is where I really, really wish I had the volume, because I was giving you the names of these vintage roses. And I would have had the names of them. But I can get cuttings from her and start some of my own. Now, a lot of vintage roses can be one-time bloomers, though the bloom will last quite a while, several weeks, and then they're done for the season. I kind of like she has all her vintage ones in one area, but on the other hand, if these were all done blooming at once, this would be kind of just green. Okay, Excellence von Schubert. I think I have a cutting of this, Pollinator. I will look. I have them right now in my bespoke greenhouse. The cuttings I got we had one of the meetings of the Rose Society, and we all brought cuttings to swap and or sell. They sold them like for $1 a piece and to raise money for the Rose Society, which I thought was ingenious. But there was a lot of vintage roses and roses I hadn't heard of and or I wanted. I have several of Earth Angel that I have that took off, and I'm going to enjoy. Hopefully it will thrive here. If not, it was no great expense. I think I spent $2 for the cuttings, and they're doing fine so far. We'll see how they do in my climate and in my garden. This is the green rose. Not the prettiest thing, but certainly very interesting. Sorry about that. My phone went off. I had to stop that. So you notice a lot of the vintage roses, they will have more powdery mildew, etc. Many of the newer roses have been bred for more resistance. But if you don't mind a little bit of the powdery mildew in the foliage, the vintage roses are sure worth the effort. They're usually really tough because these have lived for decades, even centuries, and come through it fine. So they will last a long, long time. I have no idea what I'm explaining here, but I do love that rose. Now you notice some of the foliage is smaller on some. This is Monsieur Tillier. I think I may have one of these cuttings. I don't know which ones made it through. I have to go through. I did pull out a bunch and threw them out because they didn't make it, and that's typical with cuttings. Always take more than you think you need, because 50% success rate is about average. In a future video, I'll share with you another technique for taking cuttings that you may find easier. Isn't this beautiful, this single rose? This may be Sally Holmes. I don't remember. Yeah, a lot growing on the fence and along here. I know vintage roses are not everybody's thing, but I do enjoy them. I loved all her little sitting areas beneath the trees. A lot of these are see how that red bark of the tree, these are manzanitas, and they have the beautiful bark. They're usually a shrub and not a tree. They've pruned them up to make them more tree-like. The one thing about manzanitas is they burn like jet fuel. So look at the yellow of that. Isn't that just intense? Intensely beautiful. A lot Thoughts of mulch. I would go with more low-growing ground covers if I could, so that you don't need to keep filling in with mulch, though, you know, the leaves from the trees can act as a mulch. You can see where some of these roses were going over, but still there's an elegance to them even as they dry up. Hope this isn't boring you to tears, but I wanted everyone to see all of them who would love to see it all. Yep, more open single petal rose. These have a unique beauty to me that are just well worth having in the garden. Though I do love the multi-petaled ones, like the David Austin ones. Interesting leaf structure on that, I thought. Here's a beautiful red one. It's on the smaller size, the blooms. Again, more interesting. Look at the color of those leaves, and they have the spiky edges. And look at these. This one has the petite leaves. And it throws up long canes, so it could be trained as a climber. Or you can peg it, called pegging, on an obelisk, where you wrap it round and round. And it just has a beautiful display. Coming up here, I'm going to share with you, sorry this was a little out of focus, a rose that's been on my list, and it's much smaller in her garden than I've seen in online as far as other people that have it. And it's called Paul's Himalayan Musk. I just was intrigued with the leaf structure of that and the color. Just those lines in there. I know that's a way of identifying roses. I haven't learned fully. But this is Paul's Himalayan Musk. Now look how small the blooms are. Now in other gardens, I've seen the blooms of this be much larger. So that's interesting to me. I need to do a little more research on that. And this yellow one was also just beautiful. Very beautiful. I couldn't get over the variety of vintage roses she had here. So on to some more. Look at these ones, are fuller and larger blooms. Oh, again, the vignette I loved. I loved the backdrop. Look, you could just, you could see as far as the eye could see past that. Beautiful display. Oh, Munstead Wood. This is the David Austin section of roses. And that one was the Munstead Wood. I don't have that one. I had thought about getting it. I don't remember what this one was, but I did mention it when I thought the sound was working. But it's a beautiful one. Very similar to some I have. I don't know what I was telling you about this one. And too bad I don't know what it is. Now this deep pink one was one I don't have. I think. Let me see if I can see that. No, I couldn't. But it's okay. Some of these I do not think David Austin still has for sale on their site. Some of them they've retired, but I do know other growers do offer them. I can't remember, was it Juliet? Something Juliet rose that they retired. Now, usually they retire them if they've bred one that is very, very similar in coloration and form, but has better disease resistance, better bloom length, etc. So even if one is out of commerce, you can find one very, very similar and that may perform better for you. Sophie's Rose is that one. I was able to see that one. Now this one is not. That one is Jean LeJoie. It's a climbing miniature. That one was just profusely blooming. Loved it. Here is her area of propagation and trial. And obviously she's got more spots for roses to put out. And that's why she grows them like this until they're ready to go out in her landscape. And they do very well, obviously, for her. And it's a great idea to test out and see if you like the blooms of something. I'm sure she's traded with others to get cuttings to see how they perform for her and if she wants to include them in her garden. Or she'll buy some bare root from rose suppliers and grow them in her climate and before she puts them in the ground to see how well they do. And I think it's a fantastic, fantastic idea. So here is the yellow roses along the fence that are in the barrels. Shows you how well you can grow roses in containers. Oh, I had to do this because I was thinking of making a sign. So I thought, oh, I'll video that so I know to keep it. Live life in full bloom. Perfect garden sign to paint. Now here is where she had grown these roses. A lot of them are Sally Holmes up these these are actually manzanitas pieces that they've either cut out of their landscape to thin them because they are a big fire hazard, but turned them into these obelisks or frames for the roses to grow up. These are not live, they are dead, the manzanita trunks. And yeah, this rose I loved because you see how the center, it has the pink with the anthers, etc. Yeah, I want to get some cuttings of this from her. And it is very similar to one I had gotten, and it succumbed to spider mites. I hope you enjoyed this video and getting to take a tour around this private rose garden that's not normally open to the public. It was just open to the Rose Society members on a specific date, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I walked away with a lot of inspiration, and yeah, I just enjoyed it so much, and I hope you did too. So stay tuned. I will share with you what I have done later in another video to mimic some of her planting ideas, the inspiration I got, and we'll see if it turns out in my garden. And it turns out as beautiful as hers. And I really liked her deer fence. That thing was 8 foot tall. So it's great to know that that does work. So I will see you in my next video.